This is part of the work that I did for the Swaziland government before I relocated to work with WWF South Africa. We're just doing a national strategy for the control and management of invasive alien plant species. So my presentation is just very brief sections, the background, which is about the rationale, then the principles of the strategy, pillars, the strategy, some issues that inform the strategy, and then the implementation process. So the national strategy actually was triggered by the fact that invasive alien plant species were spreading at an alarming rate in the country. That was in 2009. By the time this strategy was triggered, the invasion was almost beyond control. You will see in another slide where it was. So invasive alien plant species were seen to be having some impacts, and social and culturally, ecological and environmentally, and then economic and financial. Sometimes there are very difficult challenges in differentiating between social and cultural, environmental and ecological, then economic and financial, but it depends. So the principles surrounding the strategy had to be compatible with other overarching and the sectoral policies and programs within the country. The strategy has to be science-based, though there was stakeholder consultation, but science was also very important, because when you look at invasion ecology, there is science behind it. Without the science, you may not be able to conquer. Then it had to adapt an adaptive management approach. It has to be a cooperative strategy. It had to involve all key stakeholders. It recognized the rights of local communities and then traditional knowledge systems. It also had to mainstream some issues of national concern, like HIV/AIDS, like climate change, gender, and other things. Then the strategy had to be structured so that it is well coordinated and it's orderly. There were 7 pillars that formed the national strategy. And these pillars, I think, are familiar to most of us. The first pillar, there were 7 pillars, which means each pillar had an associated objective. So there were 7 strategic objectives as well. So there was prevention, early detection, surveillance, monitoring, and rapid response, mitigation, control, and eradication, building awareness and understanding, the legislative framework, strategic and coherent research on invasive alien plant species, ecology and biology, then information exchange and integration. So we thought these pillars are pertinent and relevant and very essential for the strategy to be effective. Then the strategy was actually one of the factors that was considered is a general invasion process that was actually presented by Patch and Lily. You will see it in the next slide. It shows the various stages of invasion, the progression of the invasion of alien plants. So the control methods were adopted from BOLD. They are a South African package that we adopted, because Swaziland does not have such a developed infrastructure for research like South Africa. So sometimes instead of reinventing the wheel, you adopt some things and then you adopt and modify accordingly. And in the process, you avoid wasting a lot of money, wasting a lot of energy and time and so on. So the most common method is integrating the chemical and the mechanical. The biological control is still under consideration, because at least we cannot just cut and paste from South Africa, because there are a lot of complications when it comes to biological control methodologies. Then the other uniqueness about this strategy is that the land tenure system in Swaziland is a bit different from other land tenure systems. You have the Swazi Nation land, then the title deed, which is privately owned, then we have the urban, which is crown, then we have government farms and premises. Then we have got private estates on the Swazi Nation land. We have private estates on the title deed land. So it's a sort of a fuzzy kind of land tenure system. So we took that into consideration when we did the strategy. This is the generalized invasion process which we took into consideration when we were formulating the strategy. The first phase is the pre-introduction phase, where you can apply the preventative approach. Then the introduction and establishment phase, that is the second one, where you can apply the early detection and rapid response. Then you go to the one which is now becoming out of control, the expansion phase, when the invasives have established themselves and they start to expand. Then you apply control and containment there. Then the last stage, which is where you have to apply ongoing management, that is the post-expansion phase, which is almost disaster now. So you see the arrow there. As you move towards the end of the cycle, eradication is becoming more and more difficult because the invasive species are so aggressive. They are so robust, very difficult to control, and they spread. Like, for example, Cromulina odorata, one plant can produce more than 1 million seeds at a given time. Some go up to 8 million a head. So you can imagine if you have got 5 million plants in the country, if one produces 8 million seeds per given season, then you can imagine that. So this diagram was so important in informing our strategy. Oh, sorry. Then when it came to the implementation aspect of the strategy, this strategy we laid down clear roles and responsibilities for government. We laid down clear roles and responsibilities for other key stakeholders. In that country, you've got chiefs. Even chiefs in this strategy, they know what they have to do to contribute to eradicating or controlling invasive alien species. Local communities, all these stakeholders that I'm talking about, that are sometimes sometimes they are not involved in eradication directly, but in this case, chiefs, the local authorities, they have their responsibilities in black and white, and they were involved when those were validated. Then we also have government obligations here. Then there are some relevant institutional arrangements. We have an institutional framework within government, and then the other institutional frameworks outside government. Then we had a budget for the initial 5 years. Even the funding options for implementation purposes, national sources, the National Environment Fund and the National Forest Fund and other government sources, then external funding from multilateral and bilateral donor organizations, including JEF and so on and so forth. Then the strategy has an appendix, which is a strategic management plan for 5 years. You see the budget is 5 years, then it was budgeted against the strategic management plan of the initial 5 years. We thought 5 years is better than making it 10 years because invasive species are so dynamic. You cannot monitor them over. We have to cut it in, break it down into 5, 5, 5, 5. Maybe with time you can break it into 10 when you are winning. Thank you.